What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Mike Maxwell. Today's guest is known as Meggs, a.k.a. David Hook. I guess I'm going to have to double check and make sure. I'm pretty sure his name's out there. So he does a lot of mural work, humongous murals, which I'm interested to talk to him about. I came across his work at least a few years ago. I started seeing him show some stuff in some galleries and these big wall paintings that were really cool and interesting to see. I think I saw some stuff in Miami maybe the last time I was out there for Art Basel, which is coming up again soon. I'd love to go out there again, but I don't think it's going to happen. What's up, guys? We haven't talked in a while, or you haven't listened to me talk at you in quite some time. It's probably been like a couple months now. Maybe just a little over a month. Everything's going really good. I just dropped off some art for the upcoming Metamoris tournament that's happening in LA on the 22nd, which hopefully this should be out by then. I just did a big mural project here in San Diego, which it's a very interesting thing. And I want to talk to Meggs about the public perception and how things go when you're out there, like putting work out on the street in the public. You're very much open to ridicule. I guess, man, I'm sorry I'm so burpy. I just had a beer that was so citrusy and carbonated that I'm probably going to burp the whole way through. So you're sort of open to criticisms and compliments and a whole sort of list of weird things that happen when you're making work out on the street, which can be both thrilling, it could be really frustrating, and also kind of addicting. So we'll get into some of that. So let's just jump into this thing. We don't have a lot of time. We're a little short this one, so hopefully it'll be short and sweet, and we'll get to know Meggs a little bit. So let us give him a call.
Yo, hey man.
Yeah, brother. What's happening, my friend? Can you hear me still good?
Yes.
Yeah, I had, even after we first spoke for a second, everything was sounding fine. I still had some technical difficulties down on this end. It never fails. It's so funny. But it's almost always user error.
Yep.
Like, I blame the technology and sometimes there's some minor, like, breakages and that sort of thing. But it's almost always my fault.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same with my life too, I guess.
So, first I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me. We never met before, so nice to meet you in this bizarre digital form here.
Likewise.
I guess we have some mutual friends. My buddy Freddie was just out in LA from Montreal, and he actually connected us to get this thing done. So, let's sort of just jump right into it. I guess we're a little short on time. You grew up in Australia. You're in LA now, but you grew up in Australia, right?
Yes. Yep. That's correct.
What age did you make the jump?
The jump from Australia to the US pretty recently. Only last year. I basically am officially on a working visa as of, I think it was probably February, March this year, actually. But I started technically like living here in the process of applying for that visa from, I guess it was like September last year, September 2013.
Okay, so is it that process kind of a pain in the ass, yeah?
Yes, it is, yeah.
You really have to get rung through the sort of bureaucratic system that is tax law, really.
Pretty much, basically, yeah. They just want to know that you're going to make income and pay taxes, I think, is the ultimate thing, right? The wealthier you are, the easier it is.
That's all it is. It's just a little collection on the side.
Uh-huh.
But they really make you jump through some hoops to make that happen, which I imagine is, as an artist, is a tough sort of process to have to deal with that sort of bureaucratic routine.
Dude, it kind of is. Like, it was a real it was a lot of headache for me as far as a visual artist. They're kind of like requirements, basically, when you apply for an O1, which is a specialty an alien or whatever with special ability, um,
That
or something
sounds
like that.
that sounds so bad.
Dude, it's so good. Yeah, I can't remember that's something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, basically the requirements are fairly generalized as such. So if you were an actor or a musician or a visual artist or whatever, a lot of it pertains to kind of more institutional based accolades and stuff like that and awards,
right.
which coming especially from a background like mine, like a DIY street art background, I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of. Thankfully, I have a university degree in graphic design, which I guess helps in some ways. So I get the education box ticked, but other, otherwise it was like basically supplying as much collateral information about the value of what you do as possible.
Yeah.
And I went pretty hard on it. Maybe my design background or the fact that because I'd already kind of established myself here, and I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to step backwards as far as what I'd sort of already got going with Momentum and stuff in the US.
Yeah.
So I like put together, it was like a 300-page document on myself, which was
Oh, wow.
fucking took me a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, I imagine.
It was intense, man. But it was great because at least I got to go through and somewhat formalize like a lot of what I'd done.
Yeah. And I feel like that's sometimes, and I'm sort of generalizing creative types, but that's sort of having to go back and organization seems to be tend to be an issue with.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I mean, I feel like compared to a lot of other artists, maybe having that graphic design background and working as a graphic designer in industry with clients and all that, like professionally, basically, I'd say my systems of like organization, which I think everything's digital now, obviously. So it's like basically your folder filing and backup onto hard drives and stuff. Mine's pretty good. I mean, it's way lacking, but I guess in artist terms, it's probably not too bad. But then it still took me a lot of time and effort.
Well, let's jump back then. When did you start making things? Was it an early age thing? Did you have some like people in your family that sort of led you into a creative path at all?
I guess like if anyone, my dad probably would have been a main influence. Like my dad's always been a creative type. He's probably been a little more orientated, I guess, towards music, film, and theater in the creative stuff that he likes to involve himself in. He's
Sure.
a bit of a movie buff and had a pretty cool record collection. And did a lot of sort of drama. He was a drama teacher as well as being English as a high school teacher. But so my parents were really supportive, I guess, of any kind of creativity in me. But I don't know, like for me, it was just the illustrative drawing side of things definitely came out from a pretty early age, where I'd spend hours on school projects, drawing the animals and then having way less interest in the time of writing the paragraph of text to go with it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
My work, I don't know how factually amazing it was, but it looked pretty beautiful for, like for a young kid. I think like I put a lot of, so it was obviously like that was my leanings and all that, like the comic book graphics, and then like video games and cartoons, and then the figurines, all that packaging and stuff, all those kind of graphics just visually really enticed me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what led to me being enticed into graffiti, because it was sort of like large scale versions of that outside.
Yeah.
When I used to ride my bike around as a kid and catch the train and stuff. So
it's interesting to see how that, like, it's almost like almost like early it's like the 80s became like the sort of television age, I think.
Yes.
It started obviously way before that, but like slowly built itself up and then like exploded into like a sort of pop art version of itself, like all the Technicolor of the 70s sort of like prepped for like the weird fakeness and like things that were created. And I think it had a big impact on people probably were around the same age, like our generation, visually, the aspects of things.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how those things start to play out even the idea that you say that you were drawing a lot of animals in like biology class or you know whatever the school project was, you know, to see those things still carry over, you know,
Yeah.
into the stuff that you're making now. So what made the so you decided to go into the design world because it seemed like maybe like a was it a financially stable situation for you, or did you have a specific like route, like you know, like a lot of people like to go in for like t-shirt or skateboard design or
I guess like I never really during high school, I never really knew what even it meant to be an artist as an occupation, as a thing. You know, it was just like, oh, I like drawing and you know, I like painting and stuff. But it was always that's just hobby shit you do and tagging your books and
uh-huh.
whatever and like fucking around and spray can. All that shit was just like just fun stuff. And then skateboarding was my next love, and through the culture of that, obviously, like skateboarding graphics
Yeah.
were a big influence on it. But yeah, like design at the end of high school, and again, I think my dad being a high school teacher kind of like put a little bit of emphasis on our school structure. Was that the final 2 years of high school, you had to pick you had core subjects and you had to pick elective subjects, you know? And so mine were like, well, what I do, there was some, I did art class, like an art class that I did like woodwork and then design, but there was nothing that really taught or in my life that gave me any guidance onto what it would be to be an artist or an illustrator
Mm-hmm.
as an occupation. But a friend's older brother, a close friend of mine who was also kind of artistically inclined, like his older brother went on to start university to do graphic design, and I kind of looked into that, and that like seemed to be the kind of most logical like career after school step for someone visually inclined. It's like, well, you roll all those artistic elements into producing practical things. And I love design as well, I guess, like yeah, skateboarding and bodyboarding. I used to, you know, really absorb all the logos from skate companies and all those kind of graphic element stuff. So I was totally into that. That was my thing. I was like, fuck yeah, if you know I can design skateboards one day, I would have made it. You know,
Yeah.
dream come true kind of shit. So that's what got me into. Then I, you know, went into actually switched high schools and went to a high school that was orientated towards like a technical school so much that had like art and design specific subjects as well as like maths and English. And so that really nurtured, I think, the creative side more. And then from that, I got into a degree, a Bachelor of Design at one of the Melbourne's universities, Swinburne.
And so, are you still using that stuff too? Do you still do some design work when it pops up?
Oh, no, not so much. No, now I don't.
Just painting, right?
Exterior, yeah, just painting. But the design for myself and like, it's still like graphic design is still obviously like it's part of my process and how I work and the way my work looks. Like it's all partly rolled in. But yeah, I stopped doing like external design jobs quite a few years ago. I got to the point where, you know, after working full time and doing art as a hobby, once I started to do freelance part-time design and art and wanting to build the art thing, I just got to a point where it was like basically any smaller freelance work you take on, I would do it now if it was for a cool company, but I feel like now people would approach me for what I do as an artist.
Right.
And be like, yo, if you want to do skateboards, we want Meggs style skateboards. And that's ultimately like, I felt like, I mean, you know, that was more of a goal for me, more of an empowering, like fulfilling position to be in rather than graphic design, which may have some cool jobs, but a lot of the time you're dealing with corporate people or clients. And I just got sick of that world and people giving me restrictions that I knew I didn't need, you know?
Yeah, again, the rules and the whole organization and the bureaucracy again. It never fucking works out.
Right?
Well, I mean, so I know your work mostly from your big outdoor stuff, right? I would say it's funny that we bring that up because what seems to be like one of the like freest, most like open expression type of forums, a lot of times ends up being a big bureaucratic mess as well.
The exterior murals.
Yeah, like the idea of, you know, putting work out into a public space It comes with a great amount of benefits, and there's a lot of the flip side of the coin too. There's some problems that come with it sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think for one, people don't realize, especially as your scale increases, like the scale of projects, like, and your ambition for doing that kind of thing starts to build. That is, first of all, like the logistics behind getting it done are really tricky, and they build. And then, yeah, the bureaucracy of like, shit, when you're dealing with, well, you're working in a public space, like, the issue of maybe permits are required, maybe insurance is required, maybe this is required. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
you understand? Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. And you're trying to please you. Well, there's zero possibility of pleasing everybody. You can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And somehow, those people who are the least pleased, we'll call them that, tend to be the most vocal.
The haters.
Yeah, but I say that, but then the people who are super positive and appreciate something being made by hand in their neighborhood or in the city that they commute in is, 10 times better and more impactful than those few negative assholes.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, yeah, that's like the nature of anything, isn't it? It's like, yeah, when you put work out there in a public space, it's, as you said, like, it's open to critique and judgment and opinion, and I think that's probably one of the values to having art out there, is that kind of like discussion it brings. And I would think in general, in my personal experience, that the good outweighs the bad. The positivity that you receive in feedback from making public art outweighs the people that don't want it there or have like negative impact from it, or like for whatever reason are not into it. So I mean, I believe that it's a progression forward. It's a positive step forward.
Yeah. How did you? So you mentioned like even the logistics. Like if you told somebody to just paint a humongous wall, like about 40 foot tall by however many feet wide, it's a serious amount of work just to roll out an entire wall like that.
Yeah, totally.
Now to go and put a big image on there that has to fit a particular way and look a particular way is a whole nother set of problems. And I think I've noticed something interesting lately with people, and I've noticed it with myself in particular, like the translation from somebody who makes small work to a big scale. Sometimes there's a real difficulty for some creators to make that scale transition, and I've noticed the opposite as well. Some people who can make really big stuff, when they try to make the smaller, like gallery size works, there seems to be some disconnect with the actual process. It's almost like people get used to painting with their bodies, and then when they try to come down and paint with just their hands and wrists and fingers, there seems to be a mistranslation somehow.
Yeah. It's that's totally it, man. And to be honest, I find like I'm one of those people that's probably, I'm in a position now where I'm trying to translate, I feel like, more of the intricacies that I can create on a smaller scale, perhaps, onto the larger scale murals, which right now I feel like I'm in a real learning transitional phase and trying to accomplish that. And I'm going through the difficulties in my own mind of what I want to visually achieve. And this, every time it's like, shit, I want to make that look more like this, or getting over those hurdles. And, like the textures that I can create on a canvas using a spray bottle and water and getting really messy with the layers, it's like taking that big scale on a wall becomes a lot less practical, because you're controlling an area that was, I don't know, 10 inches is now 10 feet plus, It's a way different ball game. So it's definitely like my transition has been very gradual, I feel like, and it's never perfect, and it's always a learning curve and going big. And then there'll be elements, of the mural that you want to bring into canvas work, but it's like, well, one of the things I find personally is just when you become used to creating imagery with a spray can in certain ways, like a lot of the illustrative style that I can do large scale in a spray can, I'm not necessarily used to doing with a small brush
Right.
and that clean line thing. And that's something I've started bringing back as well. But it's not I'm natural on the biggest side of that, because you just get used to using a spray can, and then you're like, well, that's not the right medium for something that's, like 12 by 12 inches.
Yeah, and vice versa. You can't take those little brushes and make a nice like fat cap spray.
Right,
like
exactly.
it's not gonna work. So I think that there, and of course there's like those perfect fuckers who like find the happy medium. But you know what I think? I think it comes down to like adjusting to both, like like fiddling and tooling with each side of it until you create. Like if you're creating a big wall piece, you have to sort of map it out to work most efficiently, right? You need to work
Yes.
you can't spend a month painting a wall typically.
Exactly, right? Yeah, totally.
But you could sit down and paint a little piece in your studio for months at a time, for as long as you feel like. So how did you get into were you painting the walls first before doing gallery work? Did you have the plan to get into the gallery scene to...
No, not at all. Not really in the beginning. Like in the beginning, what I started doing street art wise was stencils, really basic stencils, and that was purely as like a bit of fun on the side, outside of like the design work stuff that I was doing, just to kind of, I don't know, I think felt creatively stale, I think, and was looking for an outlet. And a friend of mine started doing small stencils. This is around like 2003, I think. And so I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to come out and start putting stuff up as well. And I caught the bug pretty hard, I guess. Like I dabbled with just really shitty graffiti stuff in high school when I was skateboarding around here and there. So I'd always loved the subculture of street art and public art. So I got the bug, and then I always just started meeting a bunch of people through that and became part of a collective studio called Everfresh, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it was like 9 guys essentially. We established kind of like a collective studio space in Melbourne in a warehouse between 2004 and 2010 essentially, and kind of just through hanging out there, like we'd hang out, make work for the streets, and each one of us was kind of involved in, like there was a few of us that were stencil guys, a couple of guys that were more traditional graffiti orientated, a couple of guys that were more illustrative character kind of guys.
Yeah, which sounds about right. Like I think that's the common bond a lot of times.
Yeah, just a little
bit of each, yeah.
A little bit of each, and then you influence each other, so everyone starts cross-pollinating basically, and like, yeah, so we just hang out and start putting more and more shit on the streets. And then at the time, obviously, the street art kind of like subculture in Melbourne was just bubbling away, very DIY. And so crew would throw little warehouse exhibitions or studio exhibitions, or there'd be like an exhibition at a bar, and people would just throw work in. And I started to get the opportunity to do that. My first one, actually, I was kind of like, holy shit, I've never exhibited an artwork before. Like, I don't know if I want to do that. I was kind of comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But it was like, fuck it, like I'll just basically then at that point I took what I was doing stencil wise on the streets and just recreated way more cleaner, precise versions of them on wood panels, because I was like, well, for me it's sort of like in the beginning what happened more with street art was more like spontaneous in a way. It was a sort of dirtier, it was looser, it was always like changing and evolving and learning for me. But anything that then I started doing inside when I had the time to sort of sit with it, and I wanted to make it as perfect as I could, I guess. Like the designer in me came out.
Yeah.
So my work kind of took 2 different paths in a way. I had like what I was doing street side, and then I had what I was doing essentially in the studio, and then for gallery stuff, which the gallery, like, it started out like super, it was all DIY.
Yeah, which is a great
shows and stuff like that.
Which is a great way to start out, like a group of people who are sort of doing things on their own. It seems I've I've like romanticized another idea because I felt like there was something like that going on, like in that period, like '99 to 2001. You know, like there was some things that were going on in here in California, anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but then there were some changes, and it sort of fizzled out into like a more like corporatized sort of society where everyone's just trying to get paid as much as possible. Which I'm not judging anyone for what they want. Um, but some of that like do-it-yourself ethos sort of it felt like it disappeared a little bit for me
Right, right. It's
towards like the George Bush years that we sort of faced here seemed to like suck some of that out of.
so, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's when I look at the Melbourne scene now has definitely evolved and changed. I feel like maybe in comparison, when you got a smaller city like Melbourne, there's always threads of that, but somewhere like LA or like surrounding area,
Uh-huh.
it's a faster, more commercial based city with so much. So maybe I don't know.
It's everything is always evolving and changing because there's always new youngsters coming in. I made a post on Twitter or something recently saying that I love seeing toy graffiti because it means that there's some new young kid like doing it now.
Right,
Right. He sucks right now, but he might be good in 10 years. You know what I mean?
totally, right?
But he's out there doing it, like he's putting in time. And to me, there's so many people that I run into that would just like a tag on the street makes their like brain explode for some reason. And I get so much joy out of it. I was just driving last night. I was driving home, and there was this big wall piece on an abandoned shop that was it was on a really busy street, so it was obviously a permissioned piece. It wasn't very good, but the fact that there was like some bright colors and some shapes and some movement, maybe it wasn't as artistically pleasing to me as it could be to somebody else, but it made me look over there. And while I was sitting at a stupid red light, just staring off into space, I got to look at that as opposed, and it gave me some sort of sense of joy, even without it being, my particular type of work that I like to look at. But just the fact that it was there, I was like, hey, that like it made me smile. You know what I mean? Like it gave me joy, even though it didn't have anything real to do with me. And so,
and I think that's what I agree is important, man. Like I feel like the more public art that's accepted or nurtured and supported, like the better. And there's artists out there that are like super well established, and there'll be people that will drive past and be like, oh, I don't like that piece of art as well.
Right.
But maybe someone does like something. It's subjective, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about it in a way.
Yeah.
Especially public art.
It's almost like the world is in this particular area is like Yelp, and it's the people who really want to talk shit go on there and like
totally right.
like talk all their shit, and then the people who are into it, they just like are into it. It's very interesting. People are. I started reading. It's funny to even say it out loud, but I started reading the How to Influence People and Make Friends or whatever that fucking book is.
Oh, yeah, my housemate actually had that out the other day, and I was like, maybe I should read that.
I just started. It sounds so silly, but I just started reading it, and I find I'm really hypercritical. Like in my own head, like I just want to change the entire fucking world, and it comes out like an asshole sometimes. Like to other people because nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody. Yeah. Like if you tell somebody they're wrong, it's defense, fight back time. Yeah. So I started reading this book, and it gave you a couple sort of like techniques to be a little less critical and even figure out better ways to say things to get what you want. And what's really funny is like it's really changed my attitude a little bit too, as opposed to like me being like hypercritical about something. And it's usually like I'm just mad in traffic about something stupid or whatever. But somehow my luck has like turned around a little bit since having this little bit of mindset switch. Like a couple commissions have come in, like some extra checks that I wasn't expecting showed up, like. And I'm totally like, there's the people that are all like The Secret, like if you put your mind to something, like it's going to change the universe.
Positive manifestation.
I'm not a prescriber to any of the sort of mumbo jumbo that comes with some of that stuff. But when you put things into practice, and maybe I'm just grabbing two separate things and putting them together, but it seems as though that this little bit of attitude change has changed an outside perception from the general
Dude,
population.
I'm not like. I'm kind of like you are. I mean, I think I'm definitely skeptical when it comes to books like that or any of that kind of shit. Strangely enough, the same housemate gave me a book that I literally kind of hated myself for accepting and starting reading. It's called Think and Get Rich. Right?
Yeah.
So I've read 4 pages this week because it's been sitting there and I'm like, maybe I should fucking read this thing because they mentioned that other book you just mentioned. I'm like, maybe I should fucking read that thing.
Yeah.
I got this one for the time being. And like it starts off with this kind of like, in this book you will discover this, there's a power, blah blah blah. You know, I'm kind of like,
yeah, you're like bullshit.
It sounds like a pyramid scheme already,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know? But I think what the ultimate thing that they're kind of getting at in this, it's somewhere along the lines of that, like, it's the positive thought thing. You know, like if you think it and you want it enough and you're determined, then you will achieve certain things. And I do believe there's the truth to that. And I mean, there's still a lot of things that I think I want to achieve in my life, but I feel like that's probably the only thing that's really got me to where I am right now anyway, you know, like,
right
is just being determined and passionate.
And then if you also think about any of the things that have held you back in any way as well, I don't know for you personally, but for me, like looking at some of like the way I've my actions or like certain choices have had certain effects. And if you know, like a lot of times, like for the like burning bridges, I've burned so many bridges from like my early 20s, right? Like so easy. But and what I'm learning now as an older man is that if you take a couple steps in the reality is if we put ourselves in other people's shoes, it becomes a little bit easier to be empathetic with one another. It becomes a little easier, even if somebody's being hypercritical of you, if you put yourself in their shoes for a second to see what their day is about. You know, like, if somebody comes up to you and they're bitching about something, it's likely that they have some other fucking issue going on at home, like bills or money or, you know, spousal arguments or whatever the fuck that comes out and shows in you.
Sure, yeah.
And that shit seems to be a big ripple effect somehow through all of our sort of connected psyches on some level. Like we know who's the fucking asshole. You're walking around, you know who's fucking in a bad mood.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's true, man. It's and I think, yeah, when you look at it in those sort of terms, it's like what ultimately holds you back is fear and self-doubt.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, I think self-criticism is good and healthy, obviously.
Right.
Because there's no one that's immune to that by any means. And personally as an artist, I feel like that's what helps me grow and to accept others' criticism, but just not let it become a barrier in a way.
Because
it's like you have to look at it as it's like that's just part of the growth and the journey. And it's hard to everyone's like that's a hard thing to kind of keep reminding yourself and remaining motivated.
That's something that I noticed recently. The idea of not wanting to be yourself anymore and maybe that sounds, but so like the idea if somebody's being critical in that you're not good enough for this particular set of critics or whatever, you know. So this idea that you need to change who you are, not like on a grand scale, but like let's say for somebody who makes things. Like all of a sudden, I need to make things better than how I make things now. That's a great fire, but at the same time, I think it can be detrimental to somebody who takes that too much to heart and gets outside of themselves. Like the ability to be comfortable in who we are and the things that we make sometimes allows greater growth than like a forced trying. Do you know what I mean?
Couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, that's something I've definitely learned more as I grow with age in terms of my own art. It's like, you have to be, to succeed, I feel like, you know, to keep moving forward, so to speak. It's like you have to be comfortable and confident in what you're trying to make or what you are making. And then and be comfortable to like present that like your message, your beliefs, like to the world or whatever, and then accept what comes. And I don't know, it's hard to say. But
Yeah.
definitely have struggled with that a lot, and my art's about duality a lot, and that's kind of the themes that it plays with, is that like doubt versus confidence or whatever, you know.
Which it's so funny in a sort of painter's life, because it's almost as if, you know, each new piece that gets built is sort of built upon the mound of pieces that you've made before. So in some ways, you know, you're getting better with each piece. So there's always that duality of confidence with the new work that you're doing that you know you've learned from the past. Then there can sneak in the sort of self-doubt because you've kind of beat up all the old pieces. Do you ever find, you know what I mean? Like, the old pieces are shit because you've made the better shit now, you know? And so there's almost a fight in between the groupings of work in and of themselves. I was just talking to my buddy Command Z. He's getting ready to do a show at Mary Karnowski's in February. And we were talking about how, like, you know, you work for a period of months on a set number of pieces. And again, that mound builds. And all of a sudden, the new work brings on a whole new set of ideas that maybe could go as far as contradict the stuff that you were making before. Or how there could be battles, you know, that same battle. And that's, again, like the fight between this, like, making new good stuff, you know. And I think sometimes maybe when people get stale and sort of float, I think maybe there's some of that, like, worry about that thing, maybe sometimes for people. Like, if you just stay the course, you don't have to deal with that subconscious remembrance of the work that came before. And, you know, I'm just throwing that out there as a blanket statement, but...
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. Like, I feel like it's definitely. It's just, I think, as a visual artist, there's that element of the unknown when you're bringing new elements into your work.
Yeah, the experimentation.
You're old, right? The experimentation, which we all love doing. It's great, but at some point when it becomes something that you're like, this is a progression I feel good about or I feel happy with. But then if you're being successful on the previous work, then you go, shit, am I like shooting myself in the foot here? Moving too far away? What are other, like, it's that thing of obviously being happy in yourself with the kind of work that you're producing and confident with it, but also that the fact that when you are putting your work out there externally, so the thought of how's this going to be received, and then if you're like selling work, how's it going to translate into sales?
I just had this same conversation. It's so funny, and that's the thing. So like, what feels best, right, is the sort of experimentation, like getting loose, like not putting too many sort of expectations on oneself. That tends to feel the best. Like, it seems the most rewarding. And some of the stuff, once at least for, and I think this is a sort of like attention deficit sort of situation. Like, once for me, I've found the puzzle, how I found the formula, I need to break it apart again and refine it. And then, like a dummy, go back and do the same problem over again. like 5 years later or something, you know?
Yeah. I know what you mean, actually. Like, right now, I'm in that position where I just came off the Detroit show and the mural, the internship, like that whole experience, which was also really positive for me, like really inspiring being in Detroit, had a good time, was successful overall, like show and painting the mural and stuff.
Yeah, that piece came out fantastic. That fucking thing is humongous.
Yeah, that was a pretty huge flaw.
What's the biggest piece you've done?
That is the biggest piece.
Yeah, pretty fucking massive. And people can find that online, and we'll give out your stuff at the. We'll probably got to cut this short here in a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I want to hear about your experience though in Detroit. Like, there's so many interesting things that are going on out there now. I'm interested to see its evolution and see how that progresses. But what was your experience like when you were out there?
I had an overall positive experience. The people we worked with from Interstate Gallery / One Times Run, a really good, hardworking bunch of people, and I really respect that. And we had a good time working with them and around them. So there was that, but I found the city itself it's really interesting to see. I think where Detroit will head for now, because it's basically there's a lot of empty space, there's a lot of disused buildings. It's now, from what I understand, since let's say cast back a decade ago, even 2 years ago, it's now a lot cleaner, it's a lot safer. New small businesses are opening. Like there's a few more people injected into the downtown city area of Detroit, which is essentially was the kind of the dead zone, or was for a long time.
Which it'll soon be called gentrification. Just so
yes. Right.
It's only a matter of time.
But you know what? It's like I definitely feel that, and I have my issues with gentrification as much as anyone. But it's like maybe in this instance where goes from having no people to actually having people, it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah. It's always looked at as a negative aspect, but it's because the term, it's actually it's the usage of the word itself that creates so many problems. Like if there was another word for like making a neighborhood better instead of gentrification, because I think the etymology of that word is back to like feudal systems wherein, when like a higher class people obviously moved into a neighborhood that was poor, like feudal, serfs. I think they were called serfs, and the word comes from that time period, which has a bunch of negative connotations, obviously. And now what we look at it as white people moving into a non-white area and then charging more for rent. And I actually blame artists are the first step to gentrification. So artists move into a neighborhood. Sure. If you know that happened, if you see that that's happening, that's the first step to a neighborhood turning into like a popular little like latte sipping walk the block neighborhood.
But isn't that period before the latte shops open, just after the artists move in, a beautiful?
It's so beautiful. It's amazing. Yeah.
So hopefully Detroit could be at the point of a beautiful time for now. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens, because fuck man, as you know, it all comes down to who owns the property.
Yeah,
what they decide to do with it. How much they decide to charge for it. And it's sad but fucking true reality. It's real estate. I think real estate controls gentrification. Obviously, it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, that's right. But artists are to blame. First step.
Yep. They're such a bunch of fucking hipsters.
Nice. All right. Sorry we have to cut this a little bit short, but we got almost 45 minutes. Feels good. Okay. You feel good about it?
Yeah, I feel good about it.
What you got some stuff planned for the upcoming year? Anything in the works that you want to shout out, or maybe we can get your Instagram stuff out there so people can go check out your work if they're not already following you?
Yeah, I guess my Instagram is House of Meggs, HOUSE of Meggs, MEGGS. My website's houseofmeggs.com. I run pretty much all that social media stuff under House of Meggs. I guess coming up, the next trip planned is to Miami for Art Basel, along with pretty much all the other gentrification artists.
Yeah, bunch of fucking hoodlums.
Yeah. And after that, then the next major thing on my calendar is a show at Stolen Space in London. So if you have any London listeners, first week of February at Stolen Space, I'll be there. Please come.
Fantastic. All right, I want to thank you again for taking the time to shoot the shit with me. It was it's good to get to know you a little bit. And
you too, man. Yeah.
And hopefully, let's next time I'm in LA. You're up in LA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll grab a beer or something.
Yeah, sounds good, dude.
And if you ever get down here, I know you were supposed to come down here for a project that seemed to really take a tailspin. There's some real. Somebody was telling me about some of the shit that went down with Greenpeace, and they went all aggro. There's a bunch of problems. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get the full gist. It was like a fifth-hand story. But apparently Greenpeace went all aggro and was there was a bunch of problems happening.
And all I know is that walls got pulled and one was mine, and they were like, we can't guarantee you, so if you're too busy and you just want to keep working, don't jump on the plane. And I was like, well, I guess that's that.
Well, maybe we could find something for you to paint some other time. Yeah, this city, it's so fucking... Have you ever been down here?
No. Oh, I came down for one day and got a tattoo by Serge.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's gonna tattoo me pretty soon.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
awesome, dude.
Yeah, he's a good friend. He was actually like the fifth person on the show, I think, maybe.
Oh, right.
Old ass episode. All right, my friend, let's do internet dap. Bam. All right. Thanks, brother. Have a good day.
Thanks, bro. You too.
All right. Later.
All you timeless children with your predictions and flashbacks, trying to get ahead. What makes you think I can see you? What makes you think I believe you? Dreams inside my head. Have you heard me lately? New stepping up lately, shining from the past. All the dreams were flying, all the thoughts were dying. Earth is running fast. All you false pretenders and your freaky contenders trying to be the first. In my own opinion, you am not defending. You are the worst. You make the world like a circus and you're trying to curse us. Cruel, they know no bounds. But we won't let you beat us, no, we won't let you cheat us. There's only one time around. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? If you find the music in the world of music, take a closer look. If you find the listen in the dreams you're wishing, it's all the time we took.